In ancient times and in the Middle Ages, torture was a cruel reality, and the tools of executioners often became the pinnacle of engineering thought. Just seeing the tools of torture is enough to understand how cruel the customs of that time were. Judas's cradle. The device called the Judas's cradle is quite simple in design and consists of a stool with a metal or wooden pyramid on top. Its working principle was also incredibly simple. The victim was stripped naked, tied with ropes, and suspended over the device. Then they were very slowly lowered until the sharp end of the pyramid penetrated the victim's body, tearing the anal opening and dislocating the joints. Sometimes the victim was also rocked back and forth or lifted and dropped several times to inflict more damage. In extreme cases, a person was left in this position overnight to suffer until morning. Considering that the device was never cleaned, many people died from blood infection. The pair of anguish. This seemingly innocuous object brought inhuman agony to those on whom it was used. The pair of anguish was used to punish women who had committed abortion, homosexuals, blasphemes, and liars. The principle of operation of the pair was as follows. After the torture device was inserted into the appropriate place, the executioner would begin to turn the screw of the device, and its four parts would spread open like the petals of a flower, tearing the flesh of the victim. Victims rarely died directly from the torture with the pair itself, as the object was rarely washed or sanitized, so death often came from blood infections. Marriage with a dead person. The condemned to such a method of death were tied to the corpse after that bundle of the dead person, and the condemned were laid on the ground and left in peace. The decomposing body attracts many insects and quickly becomes covered with a layer of larvae that eat not only the dead person, but also the one tied to him, a person who suffered and begged loudly for mercy. The executioners carefully watched to ensure that the victim did not die prematurely from thirst and hunger or from heat, and fed and watered and sheltered them from the scorching sun. Scaphism. Torture, also known as boating, is probably the most brutal method of execution that has ever existed. This method of killing supposedly used by the ancient Persians as early as 500 BC. Scaphism consisted of placing the victim trapped between two boats of identical size and shape. Only the head, arms, and legs were left uncovered, while the victim was given a drink, a mixture of milk and honey. The mixture was also all over the face of the victim, who was constantly exposed to the sun. When the mixture dried up, flies would start landing on the victim's face. You may think it's a mild irritation at best. A mild irritation, but the worst was yet to come. Inevitably, the victim would be forced to relieve himself, and this would attract ants, wasps, and parasites. Initially, the insects feed on the victim's feces, but over time they will also begin to eat their way into the intestines of the sex, often fed the victim with a mixture of milk and honey without giving them a chance to die of starvation or thirst. The victim finally died of exposure, insects, and massive infections. The boat was moving away. A horrible picture appeared before my eyes. A horrible picture. All the flesh had been eaten by various insects and rodents, leaving nothing behind but a rotting, decomposing carcass. Impalement. One of the cruelest forms of execution that humanity has come up with is known as impalement. This cruel punishment has been practiced from ancient times and was carried out almost daily in Asia and in some European countries up to modern times. The condemned person was laid face down on the ground, and the executioner forced a sharp stake into their anal opening, driving it up to 40-50 centimeters inside. The person, impaled on the stake, was then lifted and placed vertically. The executioner's participation was no longer needed as the condemned slowly descended, with the stake piercing deeper and deeper, tearing organs, eventually leading to death from blood loss, peritonitis, and shock. Sometimes the suffering lasted for more than a day. These horrible tortures and executions existed in ancient and medieval times. Punishment. Do you consider the most horrible on? Write your choices in the comments below this video.